The first thing I should remember to do is to say thank you to all the activists from here who came to help me. There were some days I saw you and some days I didn't see you, but I am so grateful that you made the journey, from here all the way over to Swindon. So thank you so much for that. The three seats we're sort of thinking about, Wantage, Oxford East and South Swindon, are quite different. South Swindon being a sort of marginal Leave seat, 51.7% of people in South Swindon voted Leave in the EU referendum. Swindon as a whole, 54% Leave. And so I was working within that context, started the election thinking, I'm aiming to just maintain our position here. The majority for the Conservatives at the beginning of that election was 5875, marginal but not in our top 50. And the idea was let's not get that any worse, and do our best. And I think, having heard what my opposition thought, he was hoping to increase his majority to over 10,000. Anyway, I think South Swindon's really interesting because it's a microcosm of England specifically. It's marginally Leave. It had increased turnout in this election, and it had a hugely polarised two-horse race, Labour and Conservative, where both of us saw our vote share go up. So Labour, we increased by 9% to 22,500, which is brilliant. But the Tories saw a 4.5% increase as well, and he got 24,500. So in spite of the narrow majority, both main parties got more votes. The Greens collapsed, but that was tactical voting. The Lib Dems got a few more votes, and I can only put that down to sort of hardcore Remainers who couldn't countenance the fact that we weren't offering a second referendum as well. UKIP collapsed, and interestingly, their votes split in half and went Labour and Conservative. There was a concern it might go completely Conservative, but it didn't, which was great. So those people in traditional Labour areas who may have voted out in the referendum came back to Labour, and that was really good to see. And I think the game changer for Labour, that when we stopped saying, oh gosh, let's just not let this get any worse, to, oh, we might win, was when the manifesto came out. When the manifesto came out, and I think this is what got people to vote Labour, to be perfectly honest. I was very happy. I went to every hustings and everywhere I went, brandishing mine and holding it up, which my Conservative opponents did not do with theirs, unsurprisingly. So we ran a positive campaign defined on our own terms. Okay, we spoke about Brexit, we had to, but it wasn't all about Brexit. People voted Labour because they genuinely feared what the Conservatives would do to the NHS. Yes. People voted Labour because of the impact they're already seeing in their schools. I stood outside one school and parents are already direct debiting £10 a month to that school to keep it going. Awful. So when the manifesto came out, it was a sort of costed, deliverable, hopeful vision for change, which happily backed up the leaflets I'd already written and printed. I was concerned, thinking I hope this matches. I really felt then at that point the party, solidified, unified behind the manifesto and the leader, and Jeremy Corbyn, who, once he was given the air to breathe and actually speak, in spite of the Sun and the Mail's best efforts, it was a turning point. And his approach, in contrast to Theresa May's, was remarkable. And there was one particular day he was due to come to Swindon. We'd booked Wharf Green, the battle bus was coming, I was to introduce Jeremy, and he was going to talk to the crowd. So 700 people were duly there. I had a quick phone call from Regent to say, oh, by the way, he's not coming, he's going to do the leaders' debate. And I said, oh, that's great. So luckily, I know Caroline on the battle bus, and I rang her and said, let me on the back quickly. And got on, I looked at this crowd of 700, and everyone looked around, and the regional director said, well, someone's going to have to tell them, Sarah. And I said, luckily, I've got broad shoulders. I had Angela Rayner with me, which helped a lot. And I stood up, and I told this crowd that Jeremy was going to go and do the leaders' debate. Yeah! They all said, oh, and by the way, he's not coming. And they went, hey, but never mind, Angela Rayner's here, yes! And a local journalist said to me, he was scouring the crowd, looking for disappointed activists, and he couldn't find any, because every single person said, Jeremy's made the right decision. Yeah. And while we may or may not remember all the bits and bobs in that debate, we do remember one thing, and that was that she didn't show. Yes. And that presidential approach backfired. The person who has consistently had integrity and said the same thing for the last 2 years, in spite of it all, has come out on top. And Mrs May has been found absolutely wanting. And given that their manifesto is as impoverished of sort of thought, policy, and all the rest of it as she was. I mean, what a disaster. However, this is sort of with a prediction for the future. I mean, so having not won, we still feel really positive, which is a really weird place to be. The buzz is still going, and we have to build on it. But the context of the next election, whether it's in 6 months, a year, 2 years, or 5 years, will be different. And I think we mustn't sit back on the gains we've made. This was a particular context in this election, and the vote was very polarised. It may be different, and I think the Tory vote did grow, as did ours, even though ours grew faster. Theirs could grow, ours could, there's no complacency to be had, and we have to be alive to building on our strength and exploiting their weakness, which at the moment is not difficult, but that may change. I'm talking on Sunday Politics about the future of the left, and the first thing I'm going to say is that the left is now firmly back on the left, and I think that's important, isn't it? Social democracy, called radical by all the papers, and people left scratching their heads in Europe going, I don't think we're that radical. and we're saying, oh, this is our policy actually. We just want this social democracy, collectivism, nationalisation of assets, all of that good stuff, which isn't radical. It's on the left, but it's not radical. That's now becoming normalised, and that's the future of the left. Where in the past we dragged ourselves to the centre, we're dragging the centre to the left now, and I think that's the future of the left, and that's brilliant because it shows how sorely the Tories are in crisis, and how we have got through a little turbulence, and they're just entering they're entering theirs. I think I'm not entirely happy about the polarisation of politics, and this vote was a continuation of that. I am concerned about the lack of representation of some voices. The Green vote only collapsed because they knew it was a two-horse race in Swindon, so they voted for me. They didn't all necessarily want to, and I think that we need a better offer than just me or him. We need to be able to cross-party consensus, and I'm sure we'll talk about how we approach Europe, Annalise. Cross-party consensus is the only way, and I've needled my opponent endlessly since the election via text and in person to say, you have influence, you need to make sure that we don't leave people out in the cold, because that's why we got to where we've got to now. We've got to include everybody's voice. And I'll finish really by saying that this government is so precarious. It doesn't matter what they say, this is precarious. But Labour is two things now. A, it's a unified and strong opposition that needs to scrutinise every line of every bill passed through Parliament, and that I believe that we will. But we're also a government in waiting, and that's really important. We're a Prime Minister in waiting, a shadow cabinet in waiting, and an entire government in waiting. And so everybody does need to stay on some degree of heightened footing to make sure that as soon as that opportunity arises, we deliver on that promise. And that could be as soon as this autumn. So that's really, those are my views for what they're worth. I'll finish again with just a thank you, and to say how much fun it all was is what I'll finish on, and how very much I'm looking forward to doing it again for people.